morning, everyone. So we have a esteemed panel here, and the topic we are going to talk about is on the account aggregator adoption. Now, we have seen the account aggregator has been, the adoption of account aggregator has been on the surge in last few days, right? The technology is too good. And if you haven't experienced it, I would request every one of you to just try it, because unless you try it, you will not be able to feel the power of it, what muscle it holds. So you will not be able to understand that. So with that one, I will just like to ask few questions to our panelists who are here, so that they will help us to understand much more onto the context about the account aggregator. Yeah, to start with the account aggregation adoption itself, I might request Mr. Srikanth to help us to understand that how the adoption of account aggregator has been surged so lot, and how it is helping the people who are using it, and maybe some guide us on that part, how he sees this thing, because he has been working in this particular account aggregator completely. So I will request to guide us on that. Yeah.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thanks Vikrant, and thanks Digital Fifth for a wonderful event, and thanks for having me on this panel. See, to your point of adoption, I think it's been a slow and steady build. We started almost 2 years back in terms of actual launch and then scale up. What we're seeing now is that finally volumes are beginning to build. I mean, without going into specifics from Anumati, which is one of the account aggregators, what we're seeing is the monthly volumes we used to do in September last year, we're almost doing that daily today, right? Just from a scale up and a transaction perspective. More important, I think the question is, what is in it for the FIU? Ultimately, they are the beneficiaries who are using all this data to make improved decisions. And what we have is, I think, Axis Bank released a statistic sometime back that they're seeing actually a 30% increase in conversions for the same sales effort, for the same sourcing effort. So that value proposition is beginning to come together. At the same time, we have to be a little realistic that no matter how much we take pride in the scale that we're seeing, we're less than 0.1% of the paper statements floating around in the country, right? So it's a good start. It's heartening that after years of effort from Mahesh and all my colleagues in the ecosystem, we're finally beginning to see actual use cases being developed. But in context, I would think we are where UPI was in 2016, right? And you see where it is today. So that's the potential available.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. And as you speak about the UPI, it is, I mean, I could see one of the thing in both of the technologies is like interoperability is the one factor which makes it much more, adaptable for the users. And in that context, Mahesh sir, would like to ask you that how do you see this interoperability is going to help the users and the communities to adopt it, and how it will be helping others as a FIP also and as a FIU also to increase the adoption of account aggregator framework as such?
So thank you, Vikram. So I think it is very important for us to understand what do we mean by that word, the interoperability. So even if you set aside account aggregator for a minute, and because everybody understands the UPI apps very well. So even in a shop, if you go to any shop and you want to use a UPI app, for making a payment, you can use any UPI app. Nobody has a QR code which says you have to use only PhonePe or only GPay. So that entire ecosystem is interoperable. So in the account aggregator ecosystem also, the one who is most important, because you have 4 participants in the AA ecosystem, which is the FIP from where you get your data, the FIU, which is going to use the data to provide any of the financial services. Then you have the account aggregator, which actually acts as the consent manager. And the fourth one, which is the most important, for which everybody here is working, is the end user, the customer. So interoperability means it is up to the customer on which account aggregator app he or she wants to use. And once they select an AA app, she should be able to share her bank statements, any of the banks, using her choice of AA with any of the FIU. So to very quickly summarize, if bank 1 works only with account aggregator 1, and an FIU where you're going to take a loan works only with account aggregator 2, okay, then obviously you're not able to share the data from bank 1 to that FIU. So it becomes important that account aggregator is, the account aggregators what we have are extremely clear. They want to work with all FIPs on all FIUs. It, we from Sahamati and with the AAs have been working first with all the FIPs where you have the data, that they have to work with all account aggregators only because this ecosystem is about the citizen and not about anybody else.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you for so much great insight. Yeah. I mean, when we are talking about the interoperability, the next question comes that when the interoperability happens, the sharing of data is also comes along with it, right? So, how the data sharing which happens in account aggregator, it has been taken care in such a way that the middle layers who are coordinating to share this data in between will have no access to the layer, to the data layer per se. So they will not be able to see any sort of data out there. So in that context, maybe Sony sir would like to request you to guide us on the how data security can be handled, and the in account aggregator adoption per se, how it makes the matter for the users.
Yeah, so thank you. So I've actually got good news and bad news. The good news is that Account Aggregator has come up much ahead of the data privacy bill that is just about to come. And the bad news is obviously that with the privacy bill, if it becomes an act passed by the parliament, we are looking at very strict provisions around sharing of data. And why I said it's bad news is because the fines could possibly go up from 250 crore to 500 crore, irrespective of the size of the entity. So data is going to be treated with a lot of responsibility and accountability. See, fairly, I think from an info security point of view, because it has come out from the BFSI stable, I think all of us are pretty attuned to the fact that security is paramount. So on the security side, I don't think we need to worry too much. All the entities who are players in this space, including the account aggregator, who is actually a regulated entity by RBI, have to comply with standards, and you would have seen the regulator being very prescriptive about the kind of controls that they want every entity to, in the fray to follow. But the new element that I am seeing in this whole space is around privacy. And why I said account aggregator, and I'm sure Mahesh would agree with me here, they have been pioneers in terms of anticipating some of them. Because if you look at the core of the new bill also, I think what we are looking at is consent. And I think that is where they have cracked the code in terms of getting a great consent layer. Again, not tied to one player. It's a federated structure. And the 6 or 7 principles worldwide that typically talks about when we talk about privacy being fairness of, the ask. Why is it that you need the data? Limiting the purpose beyond, shouldn't go beyond what you really need it for. Limiting the storage of the data. Having technology, having accountability in the system in the form of entities assigned as data protection officers, and some of us probably would even get classified as significant data fiduciaries because we are a bank. So on that privacy aspect, I'm sure that account aggregator has already done a lot of good work, so I'm not seeing too much of a worry there. But the key would be that there is an element of data processors that will be involved in this whole ecosystem. The data fiduciaries would typically be an FIP or maybe an FIU also to a certain extent, but FIUs probably could even be non-regulated entities. So the data processors are the partners with whom all of us tie up, and we sort of outsource some part of what we are supposed to do to them. That probably is a weak link that might need a lot of tweaking and a lot of monitoring in terms of ensuring that at the end of the day, because a bank or the regulated entity would be responsible, I think the current layer that has been structured is kind of laying the right railroads for scaling it up in a big manner, similar to what happened in UPI, around both InfoSec and on privacy terms. However, we would probably have to relook in terms of what could be those gray areas, because again, we are only talking about digital here. There are also offline data points. So all of that, how does it actually come in when the whole model scales up? That would be a very interesting, discussion that I'm sure all of us are having. Some of us have even written back to MeetY in terms of what could be the right suggestions when that bill becomes an act. The InfoSec part, I think, by and large, is something that is already taken care by the respective entities. I'm sure some fintechs out here probably may not fully agree when I say that, there is a little bit of work that needs to be done from that space also, because when you're actually partnering with a regulated entity, there's a lot of preconditions that are required, and we are almost there. So I think we shouldn't be too worried on that count.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. So my next question would be to Mr. Manoj. So Manoj, you have been into account aggregator by hands-on, right? I mean, you have worked a lot onto this one, and you are also early adopter of account aggregator framework per se. So in that perspective, I would like to understand on the FIP, that is financial information provider, and financial information user, that is FIU. In the both cases, how this technology how this technology works, and why it helps to be adaptable for everyone. And
Hey, so as a FIP, right, financial information provider. Hi. Okay. So as a FIP, right, as a financial information provider, doesn't matter whether it is 126 banks, scheduled banks, or private banks, or 52 fund houses, right? So they already have some kind of banking system or a centralized system for which the data comes, right? So once that data is shared, right, through the API, it's just enabling account aggregator is only thing. So whitelisting and enabling. So that piece is already sorted out. On the FIU side, similarly, they are receiving the data, right? It can be Bajaj FinServ, it can be any lenders or wealth management or even risk portfolio, right? So there is a module there which will take the data, right? So if you see enabling, right, once it is enabled for one, it is enabled for all. So more or less, there are multiple TSPs, around 40, 45 plus TSPs. They have already enabled this. So this problem is kind of solved. It's just the bank has to implement it and just decide a decision saying, okay, fine, I'm going as a bank, I'm going to, or as a FIP, I'm going to go live with 9 or 10 AAs. And in future, when it comes to FIU, it doesn't make sense for me to enable only one AA, right? I will enable all the AA because it's business. It doesn't matter whether customer comes with GPay, PhonePe, Google Pay, right? For me, business is what matters.
yeah, yeah, that was excellent one. Maybe on the topic side, I would like to understand from, whoever wants to pick up the question. Since this account aggregator has been one of the key priority for for Bharat per se, as in stating that the open banking is at its peak, right? And for this particular account aggregator framework, it's built in the country, right, by the country of the people, and of course for the country of the people. It's something which we should have proud of. So I would just like to guide the audience on this thing, that how open banking is enabled in case of account aggregator.
Can you clarify the question, Vikrant?
On the open banking, how it has been enabled on the account aggregator framework. Likewise, the data sharing which we are doing between the banks. And
See, I think there are two terms which are kind of used very freely, but not properly understood, perhaps. Ultimately, what are you saying when you're saying open banking, right? I think the most visible example in front of us is UPI. It doesn't matter where you have your bank account. It doesn't matter where the payee has a bank account. There is a system in the middle which enables this interoperability, right? Open banking is one form or one use case of interoperability, right? What an account aggregator does is to standardize it, right? In fact, India is not the first country to establish open banking. Europe has had it for a decade at least, right? But the problem that they've faced is that they've just taken a regulatory approach rather than a techno-legal regulatory approach. What India has done is to learn from that and say that, open banking will work only if there is a trusted intermediary who's equidistant from an FIP and an FIU. What I mean by that is that the interests of an account aggregator have to be aligned with that of the citizen. I think as Mahesh very, very eloquently put out, right? I am the citizen, I own my data, give me a tool which allows me to use my data for my benefit. That is the very reason why account aggregators exist, right? Now, open banking, ultimately what are you saying? That I could shop for the best offer, right? I don't necessarily have to be tied down to one provider because I can't take my data out. Right? So it depends on the use case. I mean, if it is in rural banking, if it is in, in tier 2 or tier 3 towns, I think one of the mistakes we make is to equate rural with financially poor, right? We need to question that assumption, right? There are banks which have divisions which are rural but affluent in terms of business use cases, right? The problem they face there is in data friction, right? How do you get data, how do you get statements, how do you get paper statements all the way from some tier 3 town to, let's say, your central processing center in Chandivali, right? Why would you need to do that, right? So regardless of whether it is a tier 2 town or, a faraway town, what account aggregator does is to remove that friction in data coming in, right? Instead of days, you can actually give the same minutes experience to a rural customer. In addition, there are experiments which are still in the design phase to figure out how we can leverage the BC networks, which actually penetrate very, very deep into these geographies. Today, that BC network is equipped with some kind of a POS device. Security is built in. They act on behalf of a principal called a bank. We're trying to figure out how we can enable that face-to-face transaction using what we call an assisted AA network. This is still, still cooking, still, not yet fully fleshed out, but expect some action to happen over there. I mean, to your point, AA is not just for, people like us, people in the room. Right? It is meant to be inclusive. It is meant to penetrate financial inclusion to the deepest corners of the country.
Thank you. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, so, I want to add one, small thing. I think it is very important, for everybody in India, okay, to see account aggregator not to be for open banking, actually, but it is for open finance. Okay, because here this is not about, the FIUs are not only from the banks and NBFCs. It is nowhere else it has happened in the world where AA is across all the financial sectors. So it is about, insurance, your investment, your pension fund, etc. So obviously of all the four, the banking industry is the most important because it is the most used product. When you compare it with insurance and investment, whether you have a pension fund or investment or thing, for sure you will have a bank statement. But I think we need to move from open banking to open finance even before somebody else from the foreign country will occupy that word and we all follow it. I think now we need to lead instead of being a follower.
Excellent, sir. Yeah. Any would like to ask from the audience if you have any questions? Yeah. Excuse me. Mike.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, I mean, how does an account aggregator model actually solve the problem of an NIP and an NTC customer? NIP, no income proof, new to credit customer. And there are millions of that in the urban centers also. And I'll give you one simple example. A lot of people, are into professions. They earn their livelihood, on a monthly basis. They get a certain amount of money and they get in cash. And it could be, as little as 10,000 to 20,000. Unfortunately, due to the fact that they have to carry on their households and they are the breadwinners, they actually do not deposit it into the bank, right? But they carry on their livelihood. Now, this person, and I'm talking of a very live example right now, in Mumbai, he wants a loan, unsecured loan of 1 lakh of rupees. He goes to a bank. He's just not, he doesn't exist in the banking or NBFC or any ecosystem. Uh, so, yeah, but having said that, the biggest opportunity is there. And the fundamental crux or the tenets on which account aggregator is that you use data as a collateral rather than actual collateral, right? So I do not foresee that account aggregator model as it is currently resolves this real world problem.
Thanks. Can I take the question?
Yeah, sure.
And Mr. Sony, maybe as a lender, you might want to, also contribute. See, the reason an account aggregator exists is to, if you'll pardon the, slightly visionary thing, is to democratize data. To your point, I think we have to understand a couple of tailwinds which are helping us. One is the economy is formalizing at a massive pace. You've seen what is happening with GST collections, enrollments, and the single market is making life easy for a lot of these entrepreneurs who till very recently were not visible at all, right? And very soon, I can't put a date to that, but GSTN is going to become what is called an FIP, which means that through an account aggregator, a lender, for instance, can fetch GSTN returns and invoices and figure out, what is the cash flow of this customer or this potential customer, which is today not shown by a collateral, right, or a fixed collateral, number one. Number two, UPI has already, moved a lot of hitherto cash-only businesses, cash-only customers into, today I have a digital exhaust, right? I have transactions to show. I have a claim to saying that, simply put, your bank statement till 5 years back, a month statement would be about 1.5 pages. Today it is 20 pages, right? So there's a lot more data density coming in. So with these two tailwinds and the fact that an account aggregator is really going to make it easy for me to share the data, right? One, I have more data. I'm getting more formalized. But is there a way for me to declare this data authentically to someone like a bank to say that here is my data, now give me a loan for even for a day? I don't know whether you listened to the previous Oaken this thing, right? For a 500 rupee loan for a day, can you go to that level? Right? By itself, an account aggregator doesn't solve that entire range of problems. We bring up one important piece, which is about authentic data straight from the source, delivered in a secure fashion to a lender such as South Indian Bank.
Yeah, I think, so to answer to your question in terms of the income proof and the absence of it, by and large, banks have already done surrogate methods of assessing the income, looking at alternate sources of data points, or within the account statement, credits, and so on and so forth. So that is to a certain extent done. As far as your other point in terms of somebody who is actually operating without having any contact with maybe even a GST or on an individual basis, not even with a bank, possibly at some stage, I'm sure Mahesh would probably add, in terms of utility bills, whether if that can actually become a part of some of this, account aggregator framework, it would be a wonderful way because there's nothing that the customer needs to provide because he's already, I'm sure with 2-3 billion subscriber base, mobile phone is almost ubiquitous. So you don't really need to do anything there. And if that is actually going to become a very good indicator in terms of his day-to-day needs, what is it that he's doing, how many calls he are making, and what is the bill amount, and so on and so forth, could possibly become, and I'm just citing that as one example, I'm sure you would want to add more. Those are the sort of added forms that could kind of bring in a lot of value to those forms. But second part of the problem also is there, in terms of the ticket sizes. Traditionally, banks are a little averse in terms of going down that road because the cost benefit really doesn't work out. I'm sure the digital aspect of account aggregator, which is actually taking out the paper, the manual work, etc., probably could add a lot of value in terms of bringing down the cost. And some of the banks are already experiencing that as a good point where they can, instead of partnering with a lot of people, they can even directly look at some of this using this alternate source of data.
Yeah. So, do we have time for another question? Yeah. One more question, if we can pick up. We are just running on short of time, I know. Yeah. Yeah, any question from the audience? No, I don't see any question is coming in. Yeah, so we are in time. So, yeah, I would like to thank all the panelists for being here and giving us insights on the account aggregator framework per se. Even the new term which Mahesh sir told about the open financials is something stuck to my mind till now. Yeah, so thank you very much for being here and guiding us. Yeah, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.